proceed, I'd like to call to order the Public Safety Committee for meeting for Thursday, May 20th, 2021. Welcome, everybody. First order of business, is there any public comment? Michelle? I'm sorry, you're on mute.
No, I haven't received any comments, Rich.
Okay. Any changes to the agenda? I believe we do have a resolution to add. You should have all received that from Deanna. And I think I need a motion to put that on to add that to the agenda. Could I get that motion? Shauna moves. Dave seconds. Thank you. Any discussion of adding it to the agenda? We ready to vote? Shauna?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, so that'll be added. Minutes approval. We have minutes from April 15th, 2021. Could I get a motion to approve the minutes? Shauna moves, Dave seconds. Any questions or comments on the minutes? All right, I'll call the vote. Shauna?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. All right, chair's report. I do not have any specific report. And we can proceed to county administration, where we'll get a report on update on our progress on the reimagining project. And Deanna, Jason, Shelley, and I would like to note that Shelley Michelle Nunn is with us from the city, and I appreciate her attending our meeting to hear what we're doing on this side of the divide, and hopefully of eliminating that divide. So welcome, Shelley. I don't know if you had any opening comment you wanted to make to us, but the door is open. Okay. All right, Deanna, do you want to speak with us?
Jason, you want to speak with us?
Sure.
Jason, Deanna, jump in.
Okay,
right.
Thank you, Rich.
I guess I'll kick it off. We have a little bit of a presentation. You all got the memo with some attachments, I believe, last night. We'll kind of go through that briefly, answer any questions you have, and then go from there. But there's been a lot of work and a lot of things in motion since over the last month or so since the plan was adopted. Excuse me. And if we remember, lastly, the discussion was moving forward with the contingency transfer, which happened at Tuesday's meeting. In the meantime, we would develop a kind of an implementation plan that would be presented to you on the 20th. And then the resolution that you added involves actually establishing the positions at the CJC, which would take place formally at the June 15th legislature meeting. So we're following along the path that we outlined earlier. What I'll do is let me put up, I'll share my screen if it's all right with everyone, and we will get going. All right. Let me see what we got here. All right, can everybody see that screen? It says the Reimagining Public Safety Collaborative Community Justice Center.
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you. So, since the collaborative was adopted, or the plan was adopted by the legislature and the Common Council, we've been working towards developing what the next steps are and materializing them. And that was the request of the legislature. And Tuesday night, you took a big step in committing funding, although none of that funding obviously will be expended until we go through this kind of presentation of the plan and the next steps. And then the creation of the positions, and then we'll start little by little plugging away at it. And we have some different timelines here, which I should say are fluid. I mean, to the extent that we're developing now, as we start to make progress on certain initiatives, that will then change, and so on and so forth, and different things will shift along the timeline. But it's based on the information we have available today and what we know today. The presentation follows very closely the memo, which outlines, and Deanna worked a lot on this, as did Dominic and Shelley, and contributing to the different elements of it. So I appreciate all their hard work and help in putting everything together. And we'll kind of go through that and then be able to answer any questions you have. So basically, we continue with with equity being at the center of our discussions and our planning efforts, consistent with Executive Order 203 and the plan recommendations that were put forward. This next step is really about identifying how we move forward. And it's also an opportunity to set a little bit of a reset button, let's do a little bit of a process check. And as part of this process, we had conversations with, I think, all the staff on the call today. I know the sheriff, under sheriff, Dan Cornell, Jess was there, Matt, our DA, assigned counsel somewhere. And I know we had ITS, we had social services, we had youth, doer there. So all these folks we've had some conversations with leading up to this development of the memo and kind of the next steps to kind of say, all right, let's this is what we think the next steps are. Give us some feedback. How do you what did you like? What didn't you like? What can we do better? How can we improve this process? Try to identify, at least preliminarily, define some roles and responsibilities in this, whose role is what. Understand a little bit of the layout and what we think some of the framework will look like. Also talked a little bit about CPE, the Center for Policing Equity, and what role they could or could not have, or would or should not have in this process as we move forward. We're still kind of develop that. We also talked a little bit about the city's task force. And while we're not necessarily on the task force per se, we are a participant in understanding what's going on and being available. And we've talked to the city saying, listen, there's just going to be needs for us to be a participant, to be able to be part of the dialogue, so that decisions they make will most certainly impact us one way or another, and vice versa, so that there's open communication. And then also trying to sift out, generally when you meet with this many people and folks that have good understanding of things and how things work, questions have come up about process, questions have come up about decision making and those types of things, which help inform us as we make decisions and start to develop things and materialize them and operationalize them. So from there, we developed further the budget for the Community Justice Center. And here's just a brief synopsis of it. This is not new information. You're aware of this. For the most part, all the costs are split half and half with the city, split by both of us, with the exception of the project management software. That's something we're going to take on because we feel it's something that we can use throughout the whole organization, just not for this initiative. And this would be something that would be split half with the city. And the 144380 number should look familiar, because I think that was part of the number that was on the resolution that you adopted last night, and it should be part of the resolution you're going to be considering as well in terms of total numbers added up. But these are kind of just the starting phases of establishing the Community Justice Center. Here's a very sketched out timeline of implementation of things. Again, as I said, things are flexible as to how we move forward, but we've adopted resolutions around a CJC. Now we're, the next steps, assuming things pass as you're going down the trajectory and the legislature adopts and creates the position. I should back up. It was talked about before, but I'll just clarify. This relationship, these would be county employees because you can't have shared employees in that concept. So in this case, there'll be county employees, of which we would then establish a contract with the city for reimbursement of those. And that's actually kind of one of the next steps after the positions are created, or as we start moving in the next few weeks, we'll start to develop that contract for service that will outline reimbursement, invoicing, those types of things. And then we'll kind of get into some of the development of the recruitment strategy. And we have a slide at the end to talk a little bit more about that. Wanted to get constant community engagement and feedback, not only updating as to where we are with things, but also gauge feedback on those updates, which will help inform us as we make decisions moving forward. And then ultimately, part of this kind of, I think, preliminary process is establishing and coming to agreement in terms with the city with respect to what this advisory board would look like that will help advance the process forward. So this is a rough timeline. It's a good visual. It's going to definitely fluctuate. Recruitment and hiring, probably over the summer months. Hopefully a little bit quicker, but I think this is probably a conservative number, just understanding all the balls in the air with it.
Jason?
Yes.
While you're on that slide, could I just point something out to the other committee members, that if you look at the bottom 3 items on this Gantt chart, those things will be occurring before there is a project director. And so we are going to be building this while we're actively recruiting and hiring staff. So we will anticipate that once we set it up, we're probably going to get further input. So there would be further changes going forward. And since I've already interrupted, Jason, I apologize. I realized when I put the new item on the agenda, I didn't identify it properly, and I should do that. And that's going to come up in just a minute anyway. It's document ID 10152, creation of Community Justice Center positions of project director and data analyst, and approval of program funds, Department of County Administration. So that's the one. That's the resolution we added to the agenda for anybody who is watching. Sorry, go ahead, Jason.
That's all right. I think your point, adaptability and flexibility is going to be important, and a constant learning cycle and based on feedback is going to inform probably this one right here when we talk about timelines and recommendations and implementation. The framework, as I mentioned, we have to develop a contract with the city, which I don't think will be incredibly difficult. We'll talk about support primarily, meaning just functioning support as an employee. A group of employees will probably come out of my office, the county administration, the most, just because we'll be most in tune with some of the support functions they'll need. The Community Justice Center is expected, meaning the director and support is expected to give regular updates to the legislature, the Common Council. That would also mean the Public Safety Committee and probably also other community groups or community committees that are going to be involved. One group that comes to mind is CGATI and some other groups as well, to ensure that similar to the way the process evolved, and to a certain extent the way the past 14 months have evolved, constant communication about where things are, status of things, updates is going to be important. I don't think you want to have a silent moment as we go through this step, whether it's updating or whether it's updating and feedback. Constantly seeking community input, I think is going to be an important piece, both for developing right solutions at the end of the day, but also keeping folks engaged and having ownership over what's going on in the community. Advisory board framework. So one of the steps I think that we're going to need to work closely with legislators on and common council members is, what does the advisory board look like? How does it operationalize? Establish its type of membership. I think this needs to really be a community, a board with large community representation on it, to be able to, that have been involved in the process but should be continue to be involved in the process. How they support the recommendations. This will be a working committee to a certain extent. I think there's going to be some work that's going to be asked of them to participate in liaisons with the broader committee. So I think this is an important piece, and it's also what I think we envisioned is probably an advisory committee created by resolution. I would say a joint resolution with the Common Council, establishing some broad parameters around it, membership and then appointments and and those types of things, and then establishing some of its protocols and so on and so forth. So I think that's kind of one of the next things that'll happen in the upcoming weeks. And working back and forth with the city and the legislature to have something, I think, relatively soon, because I think creating this advisory board and having them, or at least some of the members being a part of the interview process would be important, because you want to have community engagement in the interview process to fill in these positions. The broader sense, Community Justice Center, when we talk about one of its major functions, community engagement, is going to be an important piece of it. This means, it doesn't always mean servicing the advisory board, but it also means facilitating town halls, whether they be in person or virtual, finding ways of working with different community organizations based on certain recommendations. Certain community organizations may be more involved than others, depending on the circumstances. That also means departments as well. It's overall working with our communications team on overall communications to the public, whether it's be through the website or other types of communication. And then, there's probably going to be some surveying from time to time, depending on issues, depending on circumstances, on how do we, is that another tool that we have to gauge community feedback. So when I say communication in general, I also, to me, that involves, without saying specifically, anywhere from communication with media to communication with through the website to social media, right? I mean, there's a broad span of how we are going to try to communicate and gauge feedback from folks. So that's a major responsibility of the CJC. The next piece is really, developing a collaborative hiring, recruitment, and then search strategy, so to speak, for these members. We've identified a little bit of the timeline. GO will have a June 3rd. You guys will consider this resolution here. It's a 3-committee resolution, so it'll come to Public Safety for your review today. If it moves forward, go to GO on the 3rd, BCP on the 14th, and then hit the legislature on the 15th. That formally creates the positions. You've already appropriated the funds, but nothing can really be done. You've got to create the positions. Common Council, consider it June 2nd. And then we'll begin, we'll develop some recruitment advertisement strategy and approach to it, get it posted within the next month by mid-July, and develop a search process that'll involve electeds, involve some department heads, some community members, and we'll map out a search process for discussion at a later point in time as well. We have on here, try to get them on board, ready to roll by October 31st. I think you'd be able to do a little before then, but I think that's a good safe bet. I think everybody would agree that we'd love to do it sooner than later, but we want to make a good hire. We're going to want to go about this in a good process, and you have, I think, some more people involved in this than you may typically with a typical position in either one of our organizations. So we want to ensure that everyone is engaged in that, and those folks can participate in that process. Here's the here's the big one, so to speak. This is this is one that will change over time. This is a timeline that just broadly put together, and as you can see, the timeline goes from May of 21 to February of 24. That's a little ways away, but it's kind of the beginning of mapping out. Some of these are all the recommendations, mapping out how we would approach time frame with respect to how we would what comes first, what comes second, and as you can see, a lot of them are all on parallel tracks. This will change. This will change. This will change on as you get into issues in terms of complexity and magnitude. So this is a fluid document, this one right here, but I think it's a good first start of talking about what we'll end up doing is getting into each recommendation, starting to understand the complexities of all of them, all the different partners that need to be involved, and so on and so forth. But this is just the beginning, and this is probably a document that will develop over time, this particular image, and will hopefully be something that we reference regularly as we start to move down on the timeline. That's it. That's what we got. In your packet, I believe you had the memo, you had the resolution, and you had just some draft job descriptions to reflect the work that these two individuals will be doing. Difficult work, challenging work, but I think it's first of its kind, at least that we're aware of in the area. So we're looking forward to kind of moving on to the next steps, starting to get a contract in place with the city, starting to develop a recruitment strategy, starting to help develop some of the concepts around the advisory boards, and then bringing that to the legislature for action, and then moving on to the next thing after that. And little pieces of these different recommendations will continue to move forward as well. Nothing will be at a standstill per se. So
Okay.
Brief overview. Deanna, I don't know if you have anything to add, or Shelley, or Dominic.
Wanted to note that we also shared this information and went through the same process with the city as well. And so we met with the police department, and HR was there, and Shelley was a part of that conversation as well. The document was also shared with the mayor and common council. So they've all had opportunity to review the information and provide input. Only received one question to date regarding the document, which is around some of the physical requirements and specifications. And so as a part of the overall development, there's a long ways to go. And so again, I agree with Jason's comments about resetting the process and moving forward, and then making sure that all the stakeholders will be directly impacted or a part of the process. And then also, Shelley, if you would make a comment, or if you don't mind just commenting about the city's collaboration on the development of the documentation.
Shelley, couldn't hear you. She's in Brooklyn right now.
I was having difficulty hearing you, Deanna. Could you repeat that, Deanna, the end?
Oh, no, sure. I just was, as a partner and collaborator in the process, just wanted you to speak for the committee to know what your role has been and you being aware of where we are in the process and the documentation as well.
Oh, okay, gladly, sure. First, I just want to acknowledge and recognize the county for the diligence in ensuring that the city has been, lockstep along the way in terms of working on these items and keeping us informed with what's going on. So I think it's been exemplary, and I greatly appreciate it. It certainly makes my job easier. But, all I can say is that the city has been involved at every step in this process, and has been able to communicate and give input and feedback. And I think that's critical and essential for the success of this. And it's an example, what we have been through, that approach is going to enable us to be very successful moving forward. So.
Okay, thank you. Jason, could I ask a favor? Could you put up the last slide again?
Sure.
You showed us.
Sure. Let me get up
And while you're doing that, I also wanted to say thank you for the preliminary work on the job descriptions. And it's great that you shared those. Just for clarity, typically that's really held at the staff level. And in this case, the decision was made to share the job descriptions because it's so tied up to the formation of the CJC. So, we should be looking at those as legislators, but understand that, it's on that edge of the turf between execution and policy. I wanted this slide up just for a moment to talk to the legislators, because we need to figure out as a legislature where these sit. And certainly several of them will be here with us on public safety, but several of them are probably better placed elsewhere. And one of the things I would like to be clear about is, as a group, that we've put them in the right place and everybody understands where they are. For example, some of them involve lobbying efforts to New York State, and that clearly has been picked up by Tiger. And in fact, they've moved on those things, which is really, really good. But again, say, Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee probably has some role to play on, say, the healing plan. Again, I'm not saying that's the way it should be, but we should make those decisions. So we should be thinking about, say, if it's a mental health issue, Shauna, your committee probably should be leading on that and then reporting back. But we've got a lot of coordination work to do here, is the point I wanted to make. So I'll stop talking. Anybody have questions or comments?
Rich, I would add too, there is going to be elements of each recommendation. None of these recommendations are probably going to sit solely in one camp, just because of the complexity and overlap. So I think you're right on point. They're going to go back and forth. There's going to be issues that are going to go from multiple committees just because of how they interact with each other. Yeah,
I guess my preference would for there to be a primary committee for each one. Yeah, and others come in to assist, but it sits in one place, so it's not. Right. There's clarity. Okay. At any rate, questions, comments? Is everybody stunned? Shauna?
Yeah, I think what you stated makes sense, Rich. And I think you and I have worked in the past together for like the marijuana legalization, the syringe exchange. And I think, it would probably be helpful for us to think forward and for some of these topics, do some combined meetings, I think would help the full legislature.
I agree. Yes. Okay. Wow, okay, Ann.
Thanks, Rich. One thing that I had that was slightly outside of the scope of what was being talked about today was that I know there was several reasons why we just decided at some point early on to focus on the county and the city of Ithaca. I'm wondering if at this point we can think about how to, or if we want to widen this out to the other municipal, our other municipal partners in the county, such as Groton, Trumansburg Police, Cayuga Heights, and such, so that we're at least coordinating with them in some way, so that there's more consistency around the county.
And that's a good point. And I know there's been discussion along those lines. I think we need to have something to offer them. So once we have the CJC up and running and we start developing, say, for example, training programs, I agree with you entirely. It makes great good sense to offer that training broadly across all the police agencies in the county.
If I could add, both Rich and Ann, there are definitely recommendations here that they're going to have to be engaged in, particularly when we talk about data pieces. And it's to your point, yes, and we will continue to communicate outward, and they're going to be brought into conversations just out of necessity. Whether we made the effort or not, they're going to have to be. So I think it's a good point, Ann, and I know that's on the forefront of, as we go through this, ensuring that they're one of the partners, the stakeholders in this.
Thank you very much.
Other questions, comments? Okay, well, I would like to bring up one other subject for discussion, which is office location. There was a proposal to house the CJC, at least in the beginning, in open office space in the mental health building. There's been some concern about that. I would invite further comment if we wanted to talk about that any further here.
I know, oh, sorry.
Yeah, Shauna?
Yeah, I think I brought up the initial concern, and I just wanted to pose it as a question, if this would be a good idea. I don't know if it would, if people are going to be comfortable walking into the mental health building. I don't know if we want it, associated. I know there's a stigma for many people, and I also realize that there's not going to be a whole lot of foot traffic for this office. But I don't know if this is something that maybe the working group can talk about and figure out. I think maybe if we seek community input from this, this would be a great thing to listen to our community on.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's something that I think we've heard similar questions, Shauna, and it's something that we agree isn't finalized. We need to think about it a little bit more. I would say it's obviously an option space-wise, but I think approach and location is important. So it's one of the things we have on our I think our lists, our things to do, is to really think about this some more and see if there's other options.
Okay. Ann, I saw your hand up. Was that residual, or did you have a comment on this?
Yeah, that was an old hand.
Okay. All right. I had one clarification, Jason, on the costs that are shown, the 144,000. That's full year, correct?
It is a full year. You obviously won't use anywhere near that for salary, so it'll just, it'll roll into its contingency. It'll just be unspent funds at the end of the day. And then what'll happen is this will need to be proposed as a OTR for the 2022 budget. So that's the way this would be funded over a 2-year period, is through a one-time or multi-year OTR. And then after that point, make a decision as to what the future holds. So
Okay.
We'll make sure that's in the budget process.
All right. Well, are we ready to consider the resolution? Could I get a motion on resolution 10152? Shauna moves. Glenn or Dave? Thank you, Glenn. Okay, this is creation of Community Justice Center positions of Project Director and Data Analyst and approval of program funds, Department of County Administration. Okay. Jason, I think you already spoke to this, but is there anything further you wanted to say about this?
No, this formally creates the positions and moves the money from general county admin. It creates a separate functional unit, so it's tracked separately, and we'll be off and running. This is the next step to things, And I don't know if there's anything else to really add.
Okay, committee members, any questions, comments? Anybody else? Ready to vote? Shauna,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Glenn,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So thank you. Great.
Thank you.
It does seem like we're making progress. This is good. It's good, step by step. Okay, next up is our sheriff. Welcome, Sheriff. Look-
Thanks. Got just a few things to pass by. Keep you up to date a little bit. Our bike patrol is all up and running for the most part, at least as far as equipment. People is another story. But they're going to be debuted this next week in Dryden. The school system is doing a Ride Your Bike to School program, and our deputies will be down there participating with the kids. So we're pretty excited to finally have that out and about and to get that going. We're also going to have another, what's become our annual thing, is a Fill the Cruiser event at Tops here in Lansing to feed the St. John's Community Center, provide them with food. The undersheriff and myself will be out there Saturday from 10 to 2. If anybody's interested in stopping by, we collect enormous amounts of food doing this event, and it all goes directly to people in the community. So it's a lot of fun doing that. We've tried to get our boat patrol out this year. Our boat has severe issues. It's basically inoperable right now, which is not good, seeing that summer is now starting. We do have a lead on a possible seizure boat down south that we're hoping to maybe acquire for little to no cost, save us all the pains of asking for and shelling out money for a new one. They are pretty expensive. Where's my paper here? A few training events we got coming up in the near future that we're pretty excited about. In August, we're going to have host mental health first aid for public safety. This is going to be for all members of the sheriff's office that aren't going to be able to partake in the CIT training. That is going to give them, more ability to develop. I'm sorry, I'm trying to read my sheet as I talk.
And you used an acronym, CIT.
Yeah, Crisis Intervention Team. Yeah, so I think you all know we've tried to come up with funding for quite some time to put on this CIT training, and we're actually going to host that in September. We've partnered with IPD. The training is $18,000. It's extremely expensive. It's a 40-hour course. So we're finally going to be able to bring that. IPD is going to pay $6,000 of it. We're going to pay the other $6,000, and then we got some money from Human Resources. They're going to help out. And our money from the sheriff's office is going to come from part of our MAT grant, because it's got a lot to do with responding to people with substance abuse issues, as well as mental health and things of that nature. So we're going to get as many people through that as we possibly can, road patrol wise. And then, like I said, everybody else will go through the mental health first aid training. And hopefully, maybe we can do it again in the future and get more people through it, at least on a routine basis. We also have an investigative interviewing course. It's Rich and I, you and I have talked about this a little bit. It's the Peace investigative course. It's a little bit different than the Reed method. It's more of a non-accusatory type of interviewing. So we're going to host that, and because we're getting 2 free spots for that. We're going to send as many people through as we can as well, and then hopefully open that up to different agencies. Because we're opening it or hosting it, we're going to get to have 2 free spots. That's typically how it works. Everybody else that goes through it, it'll be about $1,500 a person. Other than that, I had a conversation with Jason last week. We're having very severe staffing issues at the sheriff's office like I've never seen before. We are literally down to 15 deputies on the road patrol. Usually we have about 24. We're running our day shift with 4 people. That doesn't count time off, days off, vacation. things like that. We currently have 4 on days, only 6 on our 3 to 11 shift, 5 on 11 to 7. We have historically built our agency off lateral transfer applicants. We have 0 lateral applicants anymore. Our civil service list, I believe, has 12 people on it. We're getting nobody. And it's a little scary, I'll be honest. This time last year, we were trying to diversify the sheriff's office. We went from simply trying to diversify it to not having anybody and getting anybody to come here. So we're trying to come up with ways to work with that. You know, summer is obviously our busiest time of year. We're going to have grassroots doing weekly festivals. We're going to have all kinds of events we're going to have to staff. And I'm fearful it's going to get bad enough that our lieutenants and maybe even Jen and ourselves, Jen and myself, are going to be out there backing up road patrol, handling calls. So I think we got to work on it and get people to want to work here again. It's certainly a problem. Other than that, you have my monthly report. There's a few things in there. If you have any questions, I'll certainly answer them. But that's all I got. Thank you.
Shauna.
Yeah, I was wondering, is this a national trend that they're seeing?
Yeah, I think it is a national trend, and I think it's even worse in New York State. But I'll be honest, I'd never seen it happen in Tompkins County before. I mean, I came here from another agency. People from the city of Cortland aren't even applying here anymore. I just never expected it to happen here, and it's happened.
Well, my 9-year-old little boy said that if he doesn't make the NHL, that he would like to be a police officer. So
I'd recommend you try to get into sports then.
Might be able to waive the age requirement.
Yeah, that's really troubling news, Sheriff. Yeah, if I'd like to learn more about that. I'm very happy to hear about the peace training. And for those who aren't familiar with it, I've talked with the sheriff quite a bit about the read technique, which has been an accepted method of interrogation. That it, not to get into too much detail, but the fear is that it really is a negative marketing tool in terms of people who go through it, then go back in the community and will have a dim view of police practices. And I think the peace method solves a lot of that issue. So it will at least be good if we can look at the two and compare them and determine what's the best route for our community. So
Yeah,
I'm
no.
happy to hear that.
Yeah, good. I'm happy. Glad, Rich, I'll just add, you know, like all things, there's always a time and place for everything. And even the read method has times where it's acceptable and usable, but it's having that additional tool in your back pocket to try first, like so many other things.
Yes, we want a full toolbox. Absolutely. I note that there was some meetings with the city and some decisions made regarding the emergency response vehicle that I want to say the name of because now it has a new name. Could you speak to that a little bit, Sheriff?
Yeah, there was really no meeting. This has been something we've talked about over and over and over again, as far as the color of the bus, what it's called and all that. The SWAT team had come up with some ideas that, you know, again, that we've discussed in this meeting and others along the ways, and IPD was ready to make it happen, and they drafted a letter and I signed on to it. I think it's a good thing. So regardless of what happens with the SWAT team in the future, at least there's some steps being taken now in the right direction, I think.
Okay. And along that line, one of the recommendations we voted on in the reimagining was an evaluation of the past use of the vehicle. And I'd love to get your thoughts on what kind of information is out there and what do you think would be relevant to that inquiry?
Well, I mean, I have a couple of thoughts that come to mind. First is I'm curious who's going to be reviewing that. Who's going to?
I'm not sure that's been really determined yet. I think we would love to see that information here at Public Safety, if I can speak for myself and my committee members.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, anytime we have a SWAT incident, there's going to be a police report associated with it. And then there's going to be the SWAT team itself is going to have the matrix they go through and all the preparatory documents they go through to warrant a decision if a SWAT team is even justified to be used. So there definitely are documents that can be provided.
Okay, maybe that's a good starting point.
Yeah.
Anybody else have comment or questions on that item? Okay, right. I see you have a resolution, document ID 10067, authorization to accept 2019 Homeland Security Grant and budget adjustment, Sheriff's Office. Could I get a motion to put that on the floor? Dave, thank you. Glenn seconds. Sheriff, did you have anything you wanted to tell us about this resolution?
No, I don't think so, Rich. I appreciate it.
Okay, it looks like it's been helpful, $28,000 for radio equipment. Is that right?
Yeah, that's routinely how we've covered the cost of our radios, which are outlandishly expensive, if you don't know. And a lot of the Homeland Security money is funded that for several years. So just to continue that, we often have to replace radios. We have to replace batteries. All that is very costly.
Okay. All right. Are we ready to vote? Shauna,
Yes.
Dave,
Yes.
Glenn,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. So, very good. Okay. Next up on the agenda is District Attorney. Matt, welcome.
Thanks, Rich. I will certainly piggyback on what Derek said with regard to staffing being a concern. And I know that that's also true of the Ithaca Police Department right now. People are retiring and transferring out. And I think that, this is approaching a really critical point. So I don't know the answer, but I think, we need to start thinking about how we can more actively recruit and make people who want to be police officers want to work here. So that's my 2 cents on that piece that Derek raised. We're starting to have more trials. There's a trial starting next week, and that's a good thing because we're eliminating some of the backlog of individuals who are waiting for a trial, some of whom have been in jail for a while. I know that the jail numbers are a little bit lower because some people who are waiting to be able to go to the State Department of Corrections actually went. So we're a little bit lower up in the jail because of that. But other than that, that's I'm open for questions.
Okay. Questions, comments for the District Attorney? Matt, I do agree with you that we do not want to see and with the sheriff, we don't want to see a wide swing in the numbers. This is a bit scary. Certainly in the back of my head, I've been concerned that the Reimagining Public Safety initiative could be seen as an attack on police officers. And I've articulated repeatedly that part of what we're trying to do is to make policing better and safer for the officers. And I think we have to be careful that as leadership, we're making that statement clearly, that we want to build trust in the community and to develop that trust between marginalized groups and police officers, and both benefit from us doing that. But at any rate, I worry if that's one of the outcomes of all of the work we've done. I hope not.
I certainly pay attention to, what is being said in the community, and I think the perception from a lot of law enforcement is that they're not supported now, and I think it's really something that we should be concerned about, is turning the tide of that perception and making it clear that we want to support the police and that we want to provide them with the appropriate training. We want to make them feel like they are an important part of the community and that we want them. And, that's for somebody way smarter than me to figure out how to do, but it's a concern that I have.
Okay. Anybody else? Glenn?
Thank you, Rich. Are we talking about just transfer police officers? Because I don't think we've ever haven't sponsored anybody to go to school in Tompkins County for a long time. And if we are critical, why don't we sponsor some people to go to the schools?
I think Derek can probably answer that more accurately, but I think we do have some people in the academy, but not as many as we have had traditionally. I want to say it's 3 or 4 people in the academy who then would have to be out being trained, and there's a period of time before they would even be fully independent officers. But I know people have transferred out and people have retired, and we haven't been able to replace those individuals.
Okay. Glenn, I think you make a good point. Maybe we should be thinking about that.
Well, I know we have a program in Groton that they have to pay their way to the school, but the village police sponsors them going through and promises them a year full time employment afterwards. So,
Shauna?
There's also been conversation with TC3 in regards to them doing more workforce development training. And this might really be a great way to get the local community college involved in helping with that. Because I think they're looking to more or less like reinvent themselves and have programs that people want to go to. And so it might be worth the conversation.
I think for them to provide law enforcement training, they'd have to have some certification from the Department of Criminal Justice Services. I don't know how difficult that is to do, but I know that the academy there aren't that many academies in New York State. So that would be a procedural issue.
Worth looking into, I would think.
I think they do have an Associates of Criminal Justice, right?
I think
so.
that's probably true, but I don't think that makes you qualified to be a police officer.
Right.
No, you don't. And I think this speaks to a bigger issue around police training and police academies and the training that's offered, expectations, cultural change. I mean, this is part of, I think, what a lot of we've mentioned to the state about what they have to change, because going through the academy is setting, to a certain extent, expectations and cultural expectations of being a law enforcement officer. You do have the opportunity and can create your own academy. We've had a brief conversation with Derek and Jen about that. That's huge. I mean, it's a huge undertaking, but you do have the ability to add curriculum to that in addition to the required curriculum, and you have the ability to teach it in the manner in which you want to. But that's a lot of work. It's a serious undertaking and a commitment of time and resources. And if you're already dealing with a staffing shortage, it's probably even harder to do it. But this ebbs and flows. I would look at this also as an opportunity to develop your recruitment strategy now. Unfortunately, training a police officer takes 6 to 8 months between start and getting on the road. That's a challenge. So anything to get great relief, unless it's a lateral, you're dealing with time. But this is also an opportunity to develop the recruitment strategy that you want to recruit the types of officers that you want in the organization. So I think I know Deanna and Ruby met with Derek and Jen to talk a little bit more. I was not part of the meeting, but I know that's probably part of the discussion is here's our opportunity to begin a fresh recruitment strategy as we move forward.
Yeah, I'm sorry that Derek and Jen aren't on the call right now because I'd love to get their reaction to this conversation. But at any rate, Deanna, did you have something?
Nothing more than Jason just said. I was going to let the committee know that we did meet about recruitment, and specifically, there's the short term, there's the immediate needs, but also looking at the long term things, especially like developing a strategy around working with our entire community, but also being able to target some of those things with the minoritized community. So, in other words, we received the information and heard where they were coming from, but also trying to get build relationships more closely with folks and understanding that we want to make sure that they have what they need to be successful. We don't want Derek to feel like they have to go out on the road. So I know that Ruby and I are help and recruit and look at documentation, identify if there are any not workarounds, but what are we missing in the processing to ensure that they have the help they need. And Matt, I just saw your notes. I'm not sure why my audio is back, but I'll be quiet from there.
Yeah, it's not coming through as well as we like, I think, but good point. Yes. Okay. Anything else, Matt?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, thank you. Department of Emergency Response. Jessica and
Hi, it's just me today.
okay. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Just fine. Just fine. Thanks for coming.
I think what we had was the Tomstat report and resolution. Although I'd like to make a note because the resolution in the agenda packet is not the same resolution that was passed by Budget, Capital, and Personnel in anticipation of this particular meeting. I think Kathy sent out a new resolution.
Talk. Is that better, guys?
Yes.
Is that better?
Yes.
There you go.
Yeah, the microphone's down the camera. Using the camera mic.
Right there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So you can take off the headset.
My apologies.
Well, she's listening on the
That's
headset.
better.
Listen on that headset.
Okay.
Yes, listen on the headset.
So Deanna, say everything again that you said earlier in the meeting.
This is very embarrassing. I'm not even sure what's happening. As
Okay.
you were.
Well, now we can hear you much better. So good. Jessica, I'd like to make sure we have the right resolution. You say Kathy sent that out?
I thought she had sent it out to everybody, but I'm wondering if it was just to Budget, Capital, and Personnel.
I'm looking for it.
I have it. I can send it to you, or maybe Michelle can send it.
Either
It's
way.
the same resolution number, but the dollar amounts at the bottom are different, and there's a little bit of change to the wording.
Okay. Yeah, if either you or Michelle could send it. In the meantime, maybe you could just talk to the resolution and why we're doing this.
Yes, sir. So the resolution is asking for reinstatement of the professional development coordinator position. This was a position that went unfunded for 2021 due to reduction in budgets and staffing due to COVID. Currently, so the position was vacated by the current communication center manager. Communication center manager has been doing the work of both positions, as well as additional duties related to discovery. And it's my understanding from Lisa and Jason that part of this position will be funded with DCJS funding related to discovery. So there's only, number one, it's only funded half this year. And number two, part of that half, it will be funded by DCJS funds.
And if I could just add to that, as you all recall, there was discovery reform that went through last year. One of the elements of that, of course, is that there's been a much greater demand for the district attorney to produce documents, but also Department of Emergency Response with all of the tape recordings have to be processed and turned over on an incident whenever a defense attorney makes the request. So there's a burden there as well. Or is it on every case, Matt?
It's not when requested, it's on every single case.
Okay, so what we've added is just a general administrative addition that has to be done, and it's slowing, it's filling a lot of staff time. So that's part of the reason for what we're doing here.
Yeah, we've been able to determine when this discovery reform initially started, it hadn't gone on long enough to determine how much of an impact it would have because of COVID. So when COVID hit, some of that went away just because courts were closed. Cases weren't being processed the way they normally would be. Now that they've opened back up and things are picking up, we've actually been able to determine that this would equal a half-time position at at minimum. So the fact that the communication center manager is doing the work of 2.5 FTEs, this position is needed. They will be responsible for training new dispatchers, of which we will be hiring 2 in the very near future. So it's sorely needed.
Okay, Glenn.
Hi, Rich. I found the resolution that was passed by the Budget Committee. And the contingent fund is changed from $48,071.18 to $24,037. Professional Development Coordinator is changed from $31,480 to $15,741. And the fringes is changed from $16,590.38 to $82.96.
Okay, and those are the changes to reflect its partial year, I assume. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Glenn.
Michelle, I was able to send it to you.
Okay, with those number changes, could I get a motion to put the resolution on the floor? Glenn moves, Shauna seconds. Thank you. Discussion. Anybody have a question or comment on this resolution? All right, we ready to vote? I'm going to switch it up a little bit. Glenn?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Shauna?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay.
Thank
Jessica,
you.
do you have anything further for us?
No, just a few highlights from the Tomstat report. The same ones we've been talking about over the past several months. Civil complaints are way up compared to the 5-year average. Domestic disturbances are up a bit. Fraud is actually up a lot. I'm not sure if that has to do with a lot of, current scams related to unemployment. I know I was affected by that. I see Matt nodding his head. Property checks were more than doubled. And I'm not sure what reason for that is. Be it probably businesses being checked on, businesses that were closed or buildings that have been closed. And one thing to mention from we had discussed last time was the shots fired. That's actually less than half, about less than half of the average from over the last 5 years. So just something of note.
Yeah. I did notice that fraud number. That's quite odd. I mean, that's a radical change in a spike in a month. It has not been up that high.
No, and I know I was personally affected. I had, the unemployment insurance, the unemployment benefits card sent to me in my maiden name, which was unusual to begin with. But so I had to, go through the process to report that and everything else. So, but I know a number of people, including county employees, who've been affected. So I think that's probably part of it.
Okay. Anything further for Department of Emergency Response? Okay, thank you. And we'll move on to Department of Probation and Community Justice. I see.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Yeah, good afternoon. Welcome.
Hi. Couple things going on here. We're finalizing our annual report. It's a little later to be released this year than in the past, but we're a little behind the 8 ball because our ITS or systems analyst was a huge part in creating that report. So we've been limping along when she can help us and when the new person can help us. But I anticipate that'll be released to you folks prior to next month's public safety meeting. Cases are going up. April, we had 25 new adult criminal court cases, which is the highest number we've had in a month since COVID hit in last March. Working on crafting some language for new orders and conditions to account for probationers being able to use recreational marijuana or not. The law is really specific that we have to demonstrate, the court has to have a finding of clear and convincing evidence that marijuana is an issue in order for it to be, recreational marijuana use to be prohibited. So we're in the final versions of that internally, and once we're satisfied with those orders and conditions, or proposed orders and conditions, we'll send them out to Matt and Lance for their review, just so make sure that we're all on the same page and all the legalities are covered. Our thought is to require, because the judge will have to determine whether or not there is a finding, to have a space below the condition that either signed by the judge that says, yes, the person can use recreational marijuana, or no, they can't, and why. Hopefully that will satisfy the new law. We've identified 12 cases internally of probationers from the past that are eligible for their records to be expunged. That will require us going through those records page by page and stamping expunged on every page that has to do with that charge. We don't have to, the law does not require us to get rid of those documents unless the person makes a formal written request for us to destroy them. So the records will be retained unless we get those requests, and we will mark them expunged. Matt and Lance, am I correct on that interpretation?
I think that's right, Dan. And just so everybody else knows, I've directed my assistant DAs to consent to any request to expunge filed by a defendant without contesting it.
Thank you.
Lance, did you have anything to add on that?
No, I think Matt and Dan are correct on that.
I just want to make sure that we're doing it correctly.
It's a little,
the state has not done anything yet, to the best of my knowledge.
yeah, I think they're in about a year, they'll tell you what you should have done. No, I think right, you're required to expunge them, but it doesn't say what to do with them beyond that.
All right.
Yeah,
Well,
I would add, I just would say thank you for all your work on this to Lance, Matt, and Dan. Having attended that one conversation on it, I had some sense of the complexity of what you have to do from legalization. It really has cascading consequences.
And once our conditions, our new conditions are agreed upon, I intend to have a meeting with invite all the judges to kind of explain what why the conditions are worded the way they are, and make sure that they know they have to specifically initial the conditions. We're also going to have a caveat built in that if they don't initial one way or the other, it's going to be interpreted that the person cannot use recreational marijuana under supervision. That will put the onus back on the client. If they think they should be able to use it, they'll have the ability to take it back to court with their attorney and have it addressed if it wasn't addressed at the time of sentencing. Otherwise, we'll be back and forth with the courts, spending a lot of time trying to clarify. So,
All right, Shauna?
Is there any way that we can notify people that their record has been expunged for this? I would hate for someone to go for a job interview or fill out an application and them still putting past convictions that might not be on the record anymore.
I would certainly be willing to make that effort. A lot of them, we don't have any current people under supervision, but we could try to track people down and notify them.
That would be great.
Okay. I appreciate the suggestion. Thank you. Carla and I are going to be speaking to a BOCES criminal justice class next week. It's taught by Dan Donahue, former sheriff's deputy here in Tompkins County. Just to give them an overview of what probation is and try to put in a good plug that they consider probation as a possibility in their criminal justice careers. I think tying that into the previous conversation about shortage of applicants locally, I think that's a positive step we could take at high schools and things, and going around and to career days and, letting people know about the positive work of police and law enforcement in the community, and try to build that back up as a career option. I don't think the shortage of police applicants locally is just a Tompkins County issue. I think with all the things that have happened over the course of the last year or two, I think it's a national problem, and there's just a lot of negativity associated with that career choice. So I think we're missing out on good people right now who might otherwise be interested, because there's such a negative connotation just in general. I don't believe it's a local issue. It's just affecting us locally.
Okay. Dan, I had a question. You'd indicated you're going to have a meeting with judges to talk about the marijuana legalization. We had talked about you're having a meeting to talk about alternatives to incarceration, because that had been sort of an annual event. Has that happened?
No, and I don't intend for that to happen until the end of the year, just because with staffing issues right now, the way they are, I'm down 3 officers who are out for surgeries, vacations, all kinds of things, just to be able to get a program put together and present it during the summertime is difficult, because judges aren't around, it's vacation season and whatnot. But it would be fall of this year that we'll intend to do another one.
Okay, thank you. All right, anything else for probation? All right, seeing none, we can move on to Lance. Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you. Let me start just in terms of Shauna. We're probably going to, in terms of trying to go back and find people, that's going to be a little labor intensive for the attorneys. You go back far enough, all those records are shredded and lost. I mean, they've been destroyed. Attorneys only have requirements to maintain records for so far. I imagine Matt or Dan, you go back far enough, all those records, if they're still there, are stored. It's the best way is probably public information campaigns to alert people that they have that right, and have them come forward, frankly. But having said that, I think we are in a better shape in this county. I think we've been proactive here in trying to work out responses. And there may be hiccups down the road as we bump back and forth with each other in the system and work it out. But I think we've been more proactive here than a lot of places in trying to deal with legalization, which will probably make it a smoother process, hopefully, for everybody. So you can remind me of that. Yeah. Did you?
Yeah, I guess I was wondering, is there any way that Dominic might be able to do a press release and maybe send it out to like the Ithaca Voice, Ithaca Journal, so that people know?
Dominic is with us, and love to get his reaction there.
Certainly. I'd be willing to help do that. Just send me whatever information, and I'll pull together a draft. And yeah, I'm certain we could get some press around that, and I'll pitch it as a story to folks.
That's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And Shauna, if you bring it up or remind me, I'm happy to do something at Privilege of the Floor, or you could as well.
Okay.
So we get it out that way too.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you.
All right.
Other than that, I'll be quick. I don't have much. It's not really this committee. Our department's just working as is. Our real big struggle is our family court side. We're really getting slammed there with cases. It's been difficult to kind of keep the, assigning attorneys, keeping up with the workload there. I know it's an issue for the family court judges as well, but that's not really a public safety issue, but that's for our department. That's where our big struggle is at the moment.
Okay. All right. Anything else for assigned counsel?
No.
Seeing none, let's see, we have some advisory board appointments. And This is for the reconstituted Stop DWI and Traffic Safety Board combined committee. And we have David McKenna, Stacy Cangelosi, Mike, and Shauna Black. And if I could get a motion, Glenn moves. Dave seconds. Any comment, question?
Are we allowed to vote for ourselves?
I'm gonna get a ruling, yes. We could wait until Henry's here, but I don't know how we would get the.
I'm here.
Oh, Henry's here.
Oh, good. I think you can vote for yourself. I
Dave,
don't
if
see
you
this-
vote for me, I'll vote for you.
What's that?
If you vote for me, I'll vote for you.
Log rolling. I intentionally kept my name off of this in that I did not, I wanted us to think a little bit whether we wanted to be dominant on this committee. I'm happy to join. I thought 3 members was sufficient. But I'm open to suggestion one way or the other. What's the thinking, if anybody has thoughts on this? Shauna?
Who is currently on the board?
Michelle? I think it's starting from scratch, right?
Right, there are no members on the board yet. These are the first appointments.
Okay, so Dave McKenna is applying and I'm applying. And who else?
Stacy Cangelosi, Mike.
Okay, Rich, I am happy to forfeit my application so that you could be on it. You probably should be on it as chair of public safety, right?
Well, no, I think we could have 3, so please don't step back. I think
Okay.
that's fine.
Okay,
Especially because of the MAT and social services issues. I think there's a good linkage there.
okay.
Martha?
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's not on the public agenda. And what committee are you talking about? And it's not in the public packet?
This is the appointment to the Stop DWI and Traffic
Oh,
Safety
oh.
Board that was combined.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Dominic?
I just wanted to add briefly that Jen and I are planning a press release to invite more members of the public to join this board as well, since it's new. So that'll go out either tomorrow or early next week.
Okay, well, Henry or Glenn, if you're interested in being on it, let me know. Otherwise, I will put an application in for next month. Okay, good. Are we ready to vote? So the motion is to appoint those 3 people to the new committee. I'll call the roll. Shauna?
Yes.
Dave?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Okay, great. We have a populated committee and we'll start building from there. Any other business to come before the Public Safety Committee? Dominic, is your hand up still or you have something new?
Nope, forgot to lower it, sorry.
Okay. All right, seeing none. We had a up-tempo meeting. I see it's 4:16. Thank you to everybody for participating and we'll talk to you all soon.
Thanks, Rich.
Have a good day.